My coming out story. So I came out in 2018 or 2019. So it's been about 7 to 8 years since I accepted a part of who I am. And the first person that I came out to was a woman that is 2 years older than me. And I was in college around that year. And I don't know why I came out to her. I don't talk to her today, but I remember that I just felt this sense of safety and empathy from her. And she was very supportive. She's, I don't know if she is today, but she was Christian. And she wanted to just pray for my safety and for me to feel happy being who I am. And that was really kind. I was very scared when I first came out to her. I had no idea what to say when she was just supporting me with open arms. And it was one of the first moments that I felt comfortable with being vulnerable and the emotions that subsided from that. Or not subsided, but that resulted from that. And the second person I came out to is was one of my friends, and still is one of my friends. And he's one of those people that can just almost always make you laugh and just cracks a smile on your face. And he and I believe, went to get um, Popeye's Louisiana fried chicken and mac and cheese from that, if I recollect correctly. And he's such a cool guy. We were in the same major. I was doing math and statistics, and he was doing math. And yeah, he's a great guy, super warm and supportive. Eventually, I came out to my mom and oldest sister, which was actually really hard. I came out to them, I think, in end of 2019, perhaps 2020, during quarantine situation. It was not easy just because they weren't supportive. My mom is religious, but I remember that she told me that, unlike the woman that I shared that I came out to first, my mom had said, well, I hope that you are I hope that God protects you still. And then she said, but I think that you're meant to be with a woman, and that's what I believe that's what God's plan is. Which wasn't supportive, right? It almost seemed like a backhanded compliment, just because you're told something that sounds nice, but then all of a sudden it's almost as if it's taken back, right? I hope that you're safe. I hope things are okay with you. But then says, I believe that you're meant to be with a woman. So it wasn't really supportive. And then my sister said something very similar. It was really hard, just because obviously it was COVID around that time, but also knowing that I wasn't receiving the support that I thought was unconditional from family. It was really tough. And it wasn't until a few years later when they began to accept and understand me better. I'd say probably by 2023 or so. But even then, I remember that I still had not come out to my dad. And I came out to him in May of 2023. So it's been 3 years now. I can't believe it's gone by that quickly. And I knew coming out to him was going to be really tough, just because he's not one of the most logically intelligent individuals when it comes to openness of your identity and knowing who you are. And he had said some really nasty text messages, such as, you put a nail in my coffin, you destroy the family last name. It was a lot of how people would publicly perceive you. And unfortunately, it was just a lot of projection from his own insecurities onto me. And his insecurities were revolved around how people would perceive him. And I believe my dad is a narcissist and has a lot of tendencies to try to make his own kids his in more so in the past in a way of, oh, they're like achievements of mine, rather than these are these are these are my children that I want to help grow and see succeed in how they want to succeed. And I I set a boundary with him where I didn't talk to him for a month, at least a month. And even after a month, he apologized, but then he started to say the exact same things again, such as, you put a nail in my coffin, which really hurt. And then I set another boundary. So it took my dad several months to be able to learn that, since I didn't want to talk to him, and I wasn't living at my parents' place, I was in Chicago and still am, but I believe it took my dad the shortest amount of time to come around and say, no matter what, you're my son and I love you. And I mean, I was in therapy, still am, just working through, not just, I've been able to move on from that. At the same time, there's other trauma I'm working through from childhood and trying to work on my mental health. And it is a situation where I I learned that when you come out to people, it's not just you being vulnerable, but how that person responds is also a sign of them being vulnerable as well. So if somebody's being vulnerable, but it's unfortunately not in a way that you feel supported or feel more understood by, then it tells you more about how that person views a part of who you are, a part of your identity. And perhaps it's best to set that boundary with that person, just because you don't want to continue to be around somebody who may not be able to provide you support when you're vulnerable in perhaps other aspects of your life. And in my mind, setting boundaries with my parents especially was very beneficial, because it did provide me with a sigh of relief, and I'm very humbled and grateful that I was able to financially support myself during that time. At the same time, I also recognized that it was really hard, just because that was one of the starting points in which I had to learn how to first recognize people that are supportive in the type of support I need, and then also having to learn how to support myself through words that people would say that I felt supported by. So it was both learning more about how to feel supported by my surroundings, and then learning how to support myself. And that's in a way also tying into how to feel validated by people who care about you, and then learning how to validate yourself as well. I learned that when people say, how can anyone love you if you don't love yourself first? I don't agree with that, just because when you think of it psychologically, right, as kids, we don't know how to validate ourselves. We look for that validation from others first, especially from parents. And if we receive that consistent amount of support and love and validation, then we eventually start to learn how to internalize that for ourselves, especially when we want to focus on our own endeavors, on our own path, on our own interests. So it's still important to also have that external validation, of course, as an adult, and not just when you're a child. So when people say, how can anyone love you if you don't love yourself first? I don't necessarily agree with that. And I believe that from my coming out journey, I've learned how to set stronger boundaries, especially with parts of who I am. That doesn't mean I can set strong boundaries in many other facets of my life, but this has provided a stronger foundation to help me learn how to do the latter. I also want to share that since I set boundaries with my parents and I didn't talk to them for some time, and eventually they began to realize that they just want me to be happy and to learn and grow, that they didn't support me largely from the values that they had and what they were raised with. Like, some of my parents' core values are religion and family, and that also ties back into what they were raised to believe when it came to LGBTQ plus people. And whereas I value fairness, curiosity, health, independence, so it's very different from between how I am as a person and how they are. And I recognized that if they didn't love me, then they would have had sadistic actions, or they would have had unhealthy motivations, but their behaviors are unhealthy, but their motivations are not unhealthy, if that makes sense. That's why they want to still show that they care about me. If their motivations were unhealthy, then I wouldn't be talking to them. Meaning, if they truly wanted me to feel hurt by their words, then in my mind that would be a part of what I would think could be a bad person or bad people. But the fact that they had told me, hey, we really just want you to be happy, and we want you to, and we want to still talk to you, we want to have a relationship with you, and we still want to be able to support you, so we don't mind. So at this point, it took me time, but I am appreciative that they understand that part of me. And there's other parts of my identity that can be tough for them, but there's also parts of their identity that are tough for me, right? Like, for example, they're Christians. I grew up Christian, went to a Catholic school on weekends, but I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist for 7 years. So there's parts about who we are that we can support and acknowledge, and then there's parts of us that is harder to support or acknowledge. And that's just part of being human. You just have to be able to also, besides your intuition, you also have to take a step back and logically determine, does it make sense that the support that I'm receiving from them is coming from a place of love? Or is it coming from a place of unhealthy intentions? Such as, do they want to push me down? Oh, it's just me being gay is just another reason for them to just now hate me more, right? And I know a lot of, as a Palestinian and Armenian, I know a lot of Middle Eastern individuals who will never come out to their family. And some of them are in long-term relationships or are married. And that is a life that's really hard to live. And I don't want to live that. And I just want those individuals, I hope from this video and perhaps from their own self-reflection, to eventually consider what would make them feel happy. And if not ever coming out would make them feel happy, kudos to them. For me, it just wouldn't make me feel happy. But that's the point of this video, is to share my story and to be able to help other individuals who are on the fence or unsure or uneasy to consider what makes sense to them. And again, I think the points to highlight from what I've shared are, we still desire, even as adults, external validation, especially if you didn't learn how to internally validate yourself as you grew up, or from child to adolescence to adult. So I believe that external validation is still important, but it also depends upon how frequently you want it and what kind of validation, right? Another point that I mentioned earlier is the difference between intention versus behavior, right? If somebody's intention is to hurt you, that person is perhaps not a genuinely good person. If their behavior is unhealthy, that doesn't necessarily imply that they're a bad person. And the other point that I wanted to mention, as I just shared before, is coming out is a part of learning about vulnerability, not just by yourself, but with somebody else. And if you're able to be vulnerable with somebody else and you feel and try to understand that the support that they're providing is genuine, then that's perhaps somebody that could be a good person to be vulnerable around for other situations in life. And if not, the next question is, what do you want to do? I had to set boundaries with my parents, and today things are better. We still butt heads about a number of things, but I understand that they do love me, and while their behavior wasn't fair or healthy for me, I also had to recognize that they come from a different culture. They Like, my mom was born and raised in Jerusalem, and she grew up Palestinian Christian. So when she came here in her mid to late 20s, that was a whole culture shock for her, which I'm sure also caused some trauma to have to learn and adapt to what American culture is like. And I think she's done a good job, even though she doesn't like certain American cultural parts or etc. But the point is, I really hope that from this video you're able to better understand and consider what kind of support you want from people that you're considering to come out to. Even from this, I know this is going to go a little off tangent, but I also do gay porn on the side. My parents don't support that. That's fine, I get it. I don't want people to be like, I don't want every person to tell me they have to support me with this decision. I'm comfortable with myself and don't hold shame for doing this. And I've learned a lot about doing it. So, yeah, I mean, I just want to be who I am, and to me, authenticity involves being comfortable with parts of who I am and being vulnerable to people that are going to either challenge me or be supportive, or maybe aren't as supportive. So anyway, if you like this video, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you want to check out my other social media platforms, I have Instagram and OnlyFans, which I will include in the link. I will include as a link in the description below. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I wish you well. Take care.